Have you ever scrolled through Instagram or TikTok and just been kind of overwhelmed by how perfect everyone seems to be?
Oh, yeah, totally.
It's easy to forget that it's all just a carefully constructed image.
Right, like a highlight reel.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So today we're going to dive into a case that really exposes the dark side of that online perfection.
Yeah, this one's a doozy,
I think it's going to make everyone listening think twice about what they see on social media.
for sure.
So for this deep dive, you brought us the Surlessly podcast episode about Cat Torres.
Yeah, I thought it was a really interesting story, and it's definitely relevant to what we're talking about.
Definitely. So for those who haven't heard it, Cat Torres was this Instagram model.
Huge following, like a lifestyle guru.
Yeah, she was presenting this picture of success and empowerment, but behind the scenes,
Things were very different.
very different indeed. So what was it about this story that initially, grabbed your attention?
Honestly, it was just the sheer contrast between the image she was projecting online and the reality of how she was treating the women around her.
Yeah, it's almost like a classic Jekyll and Hyde story, but playing out on social media.
Exactly. And what makes it even more fascinating is how she used her past to kind of build this narrative that resonated with so many people.
The podcast talks about how she grew up in poverty in Brazil.
Started modeling at like 12 years old.
Can you imagine?
That's crazy. I mean, it speaks to her ambition for sure,
Right.
but also maybe to a willingness to kind of bend the truth to get ahead.
And there's that whole thing about her claiming to be Leonardo DiCaprio's girlfriend at Cannes.
Oh, yeah, back in 2003.
The podcast actually found articles from back then,
With Kat confirming the relationship,
while DiCaprio's team was like, absolutely not.
totally denied it.
And she later admitted it was all a lie.
A total fabrication just to get attention.
So even at that young age, she was already manipulating the media?
It's like a preview of what she would later do on a much larger scale with social media.
Okay, so she builds this modeling career, moves to the U.S., and her Instagram starts blowing up.
Designer clothes, fancy apartments, the whole 9 yards.
But even then, there were some cracks starting to show in that perfect facade.
Right.
The podcast interviewed her former roommate from New York, a guy named Lucer,
Oh, yeah.
and he noticed some inconsistencies.
Like the lavish lifestyle didn't quite match up with her income from modeling.
Exactly.
He suspected she might be a sugar baby.
Getting financial support from wealthy men.
Yeah, in exchange for companionship and discretion.
The podcast even mentions Loser finding an envelope full of cash in her mail,
Oh, wow.
which obviously fueled his
This
suspicions.
makes sense.
And this raises a really interesting point about authenticity.
Like, even if there's nothing inherently wrong with being a sugar baby, she was presenting herself as this self-made success story.
Right, someone who achieved everything through hard work.
The classic influencer trap.
Yeah, projecting a certain image to sell a lifestyle or a brand.
Or in Kat's case, even like expensive life coaching sessions.
I think she was charging like $150 a pop.
Wow.
And all while allegedly maintaining this secret financial arrangement.
It's just so interesting how she was able to blur those lines between her online persona and her actual life.
So then in 2017, she moves to Los Angeles.
The land of spirituality and self-discovery.
And according to the Surlessly podcast, this is where her persona takes a pretty significant turn.
Things start to get a little weird.
Yeah, she starts talking about ayahuasca.
That psychedelic brew used in spiritual ceremonies.
And people close to her noticed a shift in her personality after her ayahuasca experience.
Like she became more self-centered and controlling.
Yeah, and even more convinced of her own specialness.
Like she had some kind of secret knowledge.
And this is where she starts offering hypnotism services and claiming to be guided by divine voices.
It's like she's taking on the role of a spiritual guru.
Exactly. Someone with access to a higher power.
And this is actually a really important point because this spiritual shift becomes a key element in her manipulation tactics.
Right. By positioning herself as having these special insights, she gains a lot of influence over people.
Especially those who are looking for guidance and meaning.
And it's in 2019 that she meets Anna.
Another Brazilian woman who is totally enamored by Kat's online persona.
Anna had just left an abusive relationship and saw Kat as this inspiring figure.
Someone who had overcome so much.
So when Kat offered her a job as a live-in assistant, it seemed like a dream come true.
Like a chance for a fresh start.
But as we'll see, the reality was far from the dream that Anna had envisioned.
Yeah, this is where things get really dark.
Buckle up, everyone.
It's about to get intense. So the Surlessly episode really goes into detail about just how different the life Kat was showing online was from the life she was actually living.
And that Anna was living.
Right, exactly. And it's wild. You almost can't believe it.
I know the apartment, for example.
Uh-huh.
It looked so beautiful in Kat's Instagram posts.
All like minimalist and chic.
But Anna describes it as being absolutely filthy.
Really?
Yeah, the podcast even says it like reeked of urine.
Oh, God.
And remember, Anna didn't even have her own room.
Right, she was sleeping on the couch.
Which she said was soaked in urine. It's so sad. Like she would sneak off to the building's gym just to sleep on a yoga mat.
Just to get away from the smell.
Exactly, because the apartment was so unbearable.
And on top of the awful living conditions, Kat was super controlling.
The podcast really emphasizes that.
Like she wouldn't even let Anna have any privacy.
To the point where she would demand Anna be present while she showered.
What? That's so strange.
It's like she was intentionally isolating Anna.
Making her totally dependent.
Yeah, and eliminating any chance for her to get help.
And of course, there's the whole thing about the salary.
The promised $2,000 a month.
Which Anna never saw.
Not a dime.
It's like a classic abuser tactic, isn't it?
Totally.
They promise you the world to lure you in, and then they take away your independence.
Make you feel like you have nowhere else to go.
Exactly.
And unfortunately, Anna's story is just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah. The Surlessly episode introduces two other women, Desiree and Letitia.
Both from Brazil.
Huge fans of Cass.
And their disappearances really start to unravel the whole thing.
It's crazy how their families couldn't reach them directly.
But they were posting on social media saying they were fine.
Chilling, right?
Yeah, it's so likely those posts were made under duress.
A classic tactic for abusers and traffickers.
To create a false sense of normalcy.
So that nobody suspects anything.
And prevent anyone from intervening.
Exactly.
It's almost like Kat was using social media as a weapon.
To isolate and control these women even further.
Yeah, hiding them in plain sight.
That's messed up.
So when Anna hears about Desiree and Letitia, she knows something's wrong.
Yeah, she sees the similarities to her own experience.
And she immediately goes to the police.
But of course they don't believe her.
Like so often happens in cases of abuse.
Especially when it involves online manipulation.
People just don't understand how it
It's
works.
hard to grasp.
So Anna decides to take matters into her own hands.
What does she do?
She goes to social media
Oh, wow.
to expose Kat and try to save these women.
Using the platform that Kat used to lure them in.
It's kind of brilliant.
Yeah, turning the tables.
She starts sharing her own story,
Warning other people about Kat.
which puts a ton of pressure on the authorities.
To actually do something.
But Kat doesn't back down.
Of course not.
She starts threatening Anna.
What?
Yeah, even claiming she'll use her powers to hurt her.
Oh my God, that's terrifying.
You know the whole witch clan thing?
Oh, yeah.
It was already creepy, but now it's getting really scary.
Like straight out of a horror movie.
And to make matters worse, another Brazilian model with a big following gets involved.
Yasmin Bren.
Yes. She comments on the whole drama publicly.
Which puts even more pressure on the police.
Exactly, they can't ignore it anymore.
So finally, in November 2022.
Kat's arrested.
About time.
But the arrest itself is a whole other story.
Oh, really?
Yeah, investigators go to Kat's house and try to question Desiree and Letitia separately.
To see if they're being coerced.
Exactly.
And luckily, they have training in recognizing signs of human trafficking.
Which proves to be crucial.
Because both women initially say they're there willingly.
And even accuse their families of abuse.
Probably under duress from Kat.
Yeah, it's heartbreaking how often victims of abuse protect their abusers.
It's a complex psychological thing.
But the investigators sense something's not right.
They see fear in their eyes.
And then they get a huge break.
What happens?
During a phone call meant to check on Desiree and Letitia,
Uh-huh.
the detective's line connects early.
What?
And he overhears Kat coaching them on what to say.
Oh my God, that's like something out of a movie.
It is.
Caught red-handed.
The podcast even plays an audio clip of Kat telling them to lie
I've got to listen to that.
and threatening to kick them out if they tell the truth.
Wow.
That audio was the smoking gun.
The proof they needed.
They finally arrest Kat.
And with her out of the picture, Desiree and Letitia can finally share their stories.
And expose the full extent of her abuse.
So what do they say?
What was life really like under Catholic control?
I can't wait to hear this. It's just crazy to me how someone can talk about empowerment and positivity online while simultaneously abusing people in real life.
Yeah, it really shows how social media can be used to manipulate and deceive.
Totally. It's all about creating a certain image.
So let's get into what Desiree and Letitia revealed about their time with Kat.
Okay.
What was the reality behind that facade?
Well, Letitia shared that she was only 14 years old when she first met Kat online.
14.
Yeah, just a kid.
It's awful to think that Kat would prey on someone so young.
She totally took advantage of Letitia's vulnerability.
So how did it happen?
Well, Letitia was a fan of Kat's. She saw her as this successful, inspiring figure.
Someone to look up to.
Exactly. And Kat convinced Letitia to move to the U.S. to live with her.
Promising her a better life.
Yeah, all these opportunities that Letitia could only dream of back in Brazil.
It's just heartbreaking.
Totally exploiting her naivety and her desire for a better future.
And what about Desiree? How did she get involved?
Her story is messed up too, so Kat actually fabricated a suicide threat.
What?
Yeah, to manipulate Desiree into flying to the U.S. to save her.
Wow, that's devious.
She even paid for the plane ticket.
So it seemed like a genuine cry for help.
Exactly, playing on Desiree's empathy and her desire to be a good friend.
So manipulative.
And once they were both living with her, Kat's control just escalated.
The podcast goes into a lot of detail about that.
They weren't allowed to leave their rooms without permission.
Talk to each other.
Nope. Or contact anyone from their past.
She was totally isolating them.
Cutting them off from any support system.
And making them completely dependent on her.
Right. It's a classic tactic for abusers.
And to further control them, Kat would make them do all these weird rituals.
Like setting up altars.
Yeah, and making voodoo dolls.
What?
And she even forced them to dye their hair blonde to look like her.
It's like she was creating her own little cult.
With her as the all-powerful leader.
Exactly, dictating every aspect of their lives.
And of course, then there's the financial exploitation.
Right. Kat pressured Desiree into stripping.
Saying it was like a spiritual path.
Yeah, something about gaining God's favor.
She was really good at twisting things to fit her narrative.
Totally. And she demanded $1,000 a day from Desiree just to stay in the house.
$1,000 a day.
Yeah, it's insane.
It's clear that she saw these women as commodities.
Just a way to make money.
To fund her lavish lifestyle.
And when Desiree couldn't pay, Kat forced her into sex work.
That's horrible.
She threatened her with violence, even took her to a gun range to intimidate her.
It's just sick how she used these women for her own gain.
Yeah, it's a complete betrayal of trust.
And a reminder that human trafficking can happen anywhere.
Even in seemingly normal situations.
This guy gets arrested and you'd think she'd show some remorse.
Right.
But she doesn't.
Even during her BBC interview, she denies everything.
And she even suggests she has magical powers that will hurt the interviewers.
Oh, come on.
I know, it's ridiculous.
It just shows how narcissistic she is.
Yeah, she can't even accept responsibility for her actions.
But thankfully, the jury saw through her lies.
In July 2024, she was convicted of human trafficking and sentenced to 8 years in prison.
That's good, at least she's off the streets.
But even with her behind bars, there are still concerns.
What do you mean?
Some of Kat's former friends who were interviewed for the podcast worry that once she's released, she'll just start the whole thing over again.
Oh, no, like she'll rebrand herself and find new victims.
Exactly, is a scary thought.
It really emphasizes the importance of being aware of online manipulation.
Yeah, we need to be vigilant and question what we see online.
Especially when someone seems too good to be true.
So what can we learn from Kat's story? What are some red flags to watch out for?
I think the biggest takeaway is to be wary of anyone who promises unrealistic results.
Or claims to have special knowledge or a connection to a higher power.
Exactly like Kat with her divine voices and Witch Clan.
It sounds crazy now, but it was clearly convincing to some people.
Right, and also pay attention to any inconsistencies between their online persona and their actions.
Like Loser noticing that Kat's lifestyle didn't match her income.
Yeah, or Anna's description of the awful living conditions.
It's all about trusting your gut instinct.
Absolutely. If something feels off, it probably is.
And be wary of anyone who tries to control your life.
Isolating you from loved ones or dictating your choices.
Kat's whole MO was about control and isolation.
And finally, don't be afraid to question what you see online.
Do your own research and don't be swayed by emotional appeals or pressure tactics.
It's about being an active participant in our online experiences.
Not just passive consumers who believe everything we see.
Exactly.
Well, this deep dive has been incredibly eye-opening.
It really shows how important it is to be critical of what we see online.
Kat Torres' story is a stark reminder that social media can be a dangerous place.
But it's also a powerful tool for connection.
It's up to us to use it wisely.
And to protect ourselves and others from exploitation.
Thank you for listening, everyone.
We'll see you next time for another deep dive.